Hello, everyone, and welcome back. We are here with our Pioneer 5K. We have a time-shifted match we recorded while we're talking to Dykeman and watching the finals of the Modern 10K. We don't want to waste any time. I'm Mason Clark. This is Devin O'Donnell co-hosting with me today. We're going to head straight down to Pioneer and get into the gameplay. We don't want y'all to sit around just hearing us blabber some more. So let's see what's up here in our time-shifted match. You're going to see Modern Finals at the bottom. It's unfortunately this small little bug we have, but don't worry about it. We have Shea Strausman, a regular on our event here, playing Is It Phoenix versus Phillip Silberman playing Omnath.
Yeah, and this Omnath the Light deck is kind of a recent addition, or sort of a recent addition to Pioneer. It really picked up in popularity at the Pro Tour. That's when I think the current list, current iterations have really started to become more popular. But this is basically the way that I describe this deck is Nivless Niv. It's effectively, playing a lot of the same cards that you would see in Niv, like Bring to Light. It's playing Omnath. It's playing Valki and stuff like that, but there's no actually nivs, and the reason for that is the removal you get to play. You don't have to play the gold removal, and you just get to play with Chain of the Rocks and Leyline Binding.
Yep, we're going to see a Chain of the Rocks answer a Shredder, and then Shea respond with another Shredder. And yeah, we saw Team Sewer Rat come out there and sort of dominate with this Omnath deck, having one of the best win rates, and players have been picking it up since then and liking it so far. Phillip here is stuck on 2 lands. He's going to pass back to Shea here, who, for what it's worth, was also going to be stuck on lands here. He's going to play a Pathway, though, for turn.
Yeah, and notably, that's, I believe, a Jetmir's Garden in a mountain, so unable to currently cast Leyline Binding because only 3 types, which would make the binding cost 3. And then for Shea here, we have Is It Phoenix, which is a deck that I think has kind of fallen off in popularity quite a bit recently. That's really taken a dip in terms of metagame share over the past few weeks. I don't really think it had too much of a metagame presence at the Pro Tour, but, it still is a powerful strategy, especially if you can dodge a lot of the graveyard hate.
Yeah, we saw a lot of the French players and Ghoul de Cat play this deck at the Pro Tour and spout a good win rate, but those are people that sort of always play the deck, and it can reward mastery for sure, but it is, so a lot of players have thought maybe this is a little bit weaker than the Novel Creativity deck, so it's cool to see Shea here sort of being like, no, I like the Phoenix deck. This is what I'm good at. And if there aren't a lot of Go Blanks going around, you win a lot of those mid-range mirrors that you normally can't win.
Right, and for Phillip here, we do see looks like still missing that 3rd land. Unfortunately for him, got the Chain of the Rock spell pierced, and that's a really good exchange for Shea. And resolving a treasure cruise, that's always a good place to be in.
Yeah, that's a good exchange for Shea too. Is we're going to connive here and then draw 3, and we're going to get a pretty decent sized Shredder here and start getting our attacks on.
Yeah, Shredder getting in there. Let's see if Shea has a land. Looks like we do. Pathway.
Yeah, it's a Pathway, but we had it flip from the last game on red.
I always do that with my Fables. I always forget to flip them when I'm shuffling, and then it's like turn 3. I just gotta, flip it over.
Yeah, get that little grinning guy. He's like, hey, what's up? You're like, oh, I didn't flip you. My bad.
And we see going to discard for Phillip here, and we get a Pieces. So yeah, this is looking like kind of a runaway so far. Pieces hitting, oh boy, another Cruise and another Pieces. This is getting rough for Phillip here.
I see a shock from Shea down to 16, and it might pull another threat. Looks like he definitely has to manage Treasure Cruise. And you know what? He's like, I will. Let's connive first, though. I'm gonna spend all 7 cards in my graveyard. Gonna keep that 1 mana up for a card like Spell Pierce, which I do believe, we saw Shea have 1 in his deck, and actually main decks a couple. So
yeah, you can see an attack from the Shredder here, putting Phillip down to, I believe, 15, and looks like Shea also discarding to hand size, but it's a little bit different when you're discarding to hand size with 5 lands in play versus when you're discarding to hand size with 2 lands in play. So yeah, kind of a tough spot here for Phillip. But we'll have to see if maybe Phillip can find a 3rd land. I have to imagine we have some good, good 3-mana cards here. Probably has a copy of Leyline Binding, maybe a copy of Fable. Binding is certainly a good start if he does find a 3rd land, but we're going to discard again.
Yeah, let's see here. Take a draw for the turn. Drew a Hall of the Storm Giants. This sort of thing that happens too with the Shredder deck sometimes is you're not actually super good at closing the game. This is part of why some players are sort of not playing this deck, because if you can find Galvanic plus Trespass and some Arclight Phoenixes, you're good. But some games you just sort of sit here and spin your wheels, and that's too backbreaking of the matchups. Looks like Shea's going to pick up a Time Walk and a Shredder Course here, puts an Arclight Phoenix into the graveyard. So if we can cast 2 more spells, we can start getting some real pressure on the board.
Yeah, looks like a Consider here. We're going to do a little bit of conniving. And yeah, really just looking, like you said, that is the one issue with the Phoenix deck. It's can be a little bit tough when it tries to find a closing speed, specifically like against something like Lotus Field that puts this immense clock on you, where you have to try and kill them as quickly as possible. And I think that might be part of why players are kind of shying away from the Phoenix deck, is because of that really rough Lotus Field matchup. And that deck has definitely started to pick up in popularity a lot over the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, also the Atraxa deck is, a reason some people are coming here. That is going to be game, though, for Phillip. It looks like he has got a Sacred Foundry, but no cards, I think, actually to answer what's happening here. I think, well, even if he does, I guess there's just land, activate Hall of Storm Giant. So, yeah, he's just going to pick up the cards here. Yeah, the Attract deck, like you mentioned, sort of picking up popularity, and that's a reason to play this Phoenix deck. You sort of have some of the answers for that here. We are going to quickly look at the sideboards from these players. When we come up here, we're going to pull up those sideboards, but we're going to talk about those. But Norm, Devin, what do you think is sort of happening with the decks here? Which one do you sort of like more going to game 2 and 3 here before seeing the sideboard?
Well, I guess I won't look at the deck list. Then I'll put that off for a second. It's weird because I think that with all of the exile removal that Phillip has access to between Leyline Binding and Shade of the Rocks, you're actually pretty good at exiling Phoenix specifically and not actually dealing damage to you, putting it back in the graveyard. So, you have the chains and the binding. So I think I like Phillip's side of things. And you also have something like Slaughter Games, where you can maybe Slaughter Games the Temporal Trespass to make it so that Phillip has less access to like that end game.
Yeah, awesome. Well, let's see here. Phillip's sideboard is 3 Reckoner Bankbuster, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Rest in Peace, 2 Doan Veto, 2 Rending Valley, 2 Pithing Needle, a Lavinia, and then that Jegantha Companion we saw that game. What do you like now that we're sort of looking at the deck here?
Definitely want the Rest in Pieces. Those are slam dunks. Good against Treasure Cruise, good against Trespass and Phoenix. Definitely, I think you want the Rending Volleys. They do kill Thing in the Ice, which Shea did show you in game 1, as well as the Ledger Shredders, and then potentially the Dovin's Vetoes to help fight over Cruise and Temporal Trespass.
Nice. I like it there. Makes a lot of sense. Let's see what's going on for Shea here with the old Is It Phoenix deck list. Looks like Shea is going to have a sideboard that has 2 Crackling Drake, 2 Brotherhood's End, 2 Aether Gust, 2 Disdainful Stroke, 2 Thing in the Ice, a Negate, and a Braid, a Spell Pierce, a Rending Volley, and a Mystical Dispute. What do you like out of here, Devin?
So from Shea's side of things, I want the counterspell. So definitely want, I think, Aether Gust, Disdainful Stroke, Negate, Spell Pierce, Mystical Dispute. Spell Pierce, you could maybe talk me out of because of the soft counter magic. The Mystical Dispute at least being 1 mana, it hits Bring to Light. I guess Spell Pierce hits that as well. But yeah, definitely want the counter spells, want less removal because, Phillip's deck doesn't have a ton of creatures. And then you could maybe consider going to the Thing in the Ices if you wanted more threats. Probably want the Crackling Drakes because you likely expect Phillip to have copies of Rest in Peace. And I think that's kind of the, typical sideboard plan is you want to bring in Drakes against Rest in Peace. So counter spells, Drakes, and I think that's pretty much it.
Makes sense. Yeah, let's go down to the feature match and sort of see what it is. This time shifters. We don't have to wait for the players to shuffle, which is so nice for us. We have to see here what the players have as well. It looks like we're already in the game a little bit as we're resolving an opt. It looks like the first turn sort of happened as we played a Triumph, we passed, we played a land, we opted, we played another land. And then we're going to play Ledger Shredder now that we're caught up here.
Let's see if Phillip can do a little bit better than game 1 and deploy a 3rd land here. Looking for something like a Fable the Mirror Breaker. That would probably be Phillip's best play here. Start with the Chained.
Not bad. One of the things about this deck is Phillip can lose to the Galvanic plus Time Walk plan of just take a couple turns and hit you. That is sort of a thing that he has to worry about. But he has enough Exhalation removal that if he can take down things like Arclight Phoenix, he eventually can just run Shea out of threats here. So we're going to have to see how they go about doing that as we are, speeding things up here because there's time shifting with the rest of the tournament going on. We want to make sure to get the full game here. Charter Course being resolved. We're going to discard that Spike Field Hazard. And it looks like Shea's just going to pass the turn back to Phillip.
Yeah, so potentially, likely no copies of Arclight Phoenix in Shea's hand because likely would have wanted to discard that. And we'll have to see if Phillip has maybe a turn 4 play. Nope, just a Triumph. And notably not picking up Jegantha. So, representing a counterspell of sorts here. Could be a Dispute, could be, or Dovin's Veto did, let me actually see, I don't remember. I don't think.
2 vetoes.
2 vetoes, yeah. No disputes actually in Phillip's deck list. So, yeah, just Veto here, which, if Shea has like if Shea leads with a creature spell, like a Shredder or something, then you can't veto that. So maybe just posturing as well, because Shea doesn't know the deck list.
Yep. Yeah, this is not open deck list anymore like it was in our top 8 lesson. We do have our Fable passage for lane number 5 here, and it looks like Phillip is going to cast something. It's going to be Rest in Peace now. Negate for Shea. Phillip doesn't have a counter back. And now Phillip is just going to pass the turn. It looks like to Shea. Shea doesn't want to do any opting or anything at the end of turn.
Yeah, and no veto, because Phillip likely would have fought over that. So I'm wondering if maybe just holding up a binding for instead of picking up Jegantha. That's likely what Phillip is considering.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense here. Tapped out Crackling Drake could be something that you just want to answer right away. There's also an Extinction Event in hand. So that could be what's happening. Shea is up a game here. Oh, my goodness. Yeah, and we're leading up on mana, too, so we have stuff to play. No saving that Galvanic there. We have a Disdainful Stroke. That's going to stop the first Treasure Cruise, but Galvanic Iteration still going to resolve the second Treasure Cruise. Pretty good spot if you're a Shea fan.
Yeah, exactly. You ever just, pay 3 mana and put, draw 6 cards. I'll only draw 3, I guess, because one traded for the stroke. But yeah, that is a really, really good exchange for Shea. Just playing a lot of setup here. And notably, Shea also has 2 copies of Hall of the Storm Giants. And that's an interesting wrinkle in this matchup because as we talked about Phillip's removal spells, 4 copies of Chain of the Rocks and 4 copies of Leyline Binding, neither of those are good. Neither of those can hit a Hall of the Storm Giants.
100%, yeah. And we see here Shea left up that mana because he had Lightning Axe for the Omnath. Phillip here just going to only get a card draw off the Omnath. Not as many fetch lands as there are in Pioneer. He could have fetched that Fable passage and gained 4 life, but looks to maybe saving it for a future Omnath.
Yeah, I wonder if maybe Phillip has a second copy in his hand and just wanted to see if maybe he could set up a turn where he goes Omnath, resolve that one, play land, crack the Fable passage, make some mana, do some stuff that way. And that looks like a Dispute in a Pieces.
Yeah.
Off of the Pieces. So Pieces into Pieces. Is that just like Teachings for Teachings?
Yeah, it's going infinite, as the kids say. It looks like we're just going to cast other pieces here. Shea's like, yeah, you kept your land. I don't really care. I'm going to just, try and find all my Arclight Phoenixes and start bringing these things back. As, Shea has set up a stack graveyard here. And, he did delve away the Galvanic iteration before, but should have a second copy in his deck. And if he can go Galvanic into Temporal Trespass, that's going to be 6 damage from the Arclights twice. That's 12 with a Hall of the Storm Giant. That's 19. He just has to find 1 point of damage at that point to win the match.
Yeah, and Shea tapped out here. This would be a pretty back-breaking turn for something like a Rest in Peace. We know Phillip only has 2 copies. Shea doesn't necessarily know that. But if Phillip can find that second copy of Rest in Peace, that's going to turn this game on its head. But looks like we did not find that, so we're just passing with the Omnath up, likely holding up Binding, which can maybe take care of 1 Phoenix, but again, like you said, if Shea does have the Temporal Trespass Galvanic Time Walk combo, that's it's going to be a lot for Phillip to fight through.
Yeah, we see Shea here starting to unload a flurry of cantrips here, considering away, and that's going to be 2 spells. Just needs 1 more for his Arclight Phoenixes, and yeah, founds an op, bottom a card, take a draw, Skipoo, and that's going to bring back those Arclight Phoenixes, which Phillip does have some answers for Shea's Phoenixes in the form of, Leyline Binding, Chain of the Rocks, etc. But getting in this burst of damage could set up for the Hall of Storm Giants.
Just taking 6 as well, so I would imagine no copies of Leyline Binding and a Cruise follow-up too. It's just everything coming up here for Shea. This is this is a lot for Phillip to fight through. We've effectively cast this is I think the 4th copy of Cruise if you count the iteration this game. So just, all of the cruising happening and just not a lot going on for Phillip here. Maybe can find something like a Bring to Light to help him sort of come back and stabilize, but
he discards 2 Arclights per turn. Oh my goodness. That is so backbreaking if Phillip does not have a Rest in Peace. And and you can see why players this are 4 cards, and when you get your sort of all going, it snowballs so out of control that it's so hard to come up with. And like we mentioned before, Phillip's deck does have Binding, Chain of the Rocks, and things like that. But those answers, half of them are sorcery speed, and we see this happen now where it's like, all right, I can answer some of these Phoenixes, but they sort of chip shot me, and you have that late game combo that goes over the top. And here these 2 Chain of the Rocks. These Arclights look a lot like Lightning Bolt this game, but they are forcing Phillip Also, heaven forbid Shea splash
on
a
the
Field of
same-
Ruin.
I know, right? I just want 3 Chain of the Rocks at the same land. I don't think I've ever seen that before. Also, I will say something about Chain of the Rocks in terms of paper play. I don't know if you feel this way, but it is the most annoying card to play in paper because you have to enchant your land, take their creature, and you have 2 permanents attached to this one land. You're like, what the heck am I doing? What's going on here?
It is the worst. I recently had to play with it some, and I was like, wow, this card is nice, but I don't know if it's worth this hassle. Maybe I should just be playing a Traxxas or something. Maybe that can make my life easier. As we're going to see the fetch here, that's going to gain 4 life for Phillip. That is very important. It's fetch lands in this format. They don't lose your life, so they're only going to gain you with Omnath as we do see Legislator come down.
Yeah, and that's kind of, we see the sort of the structural flaw for the Omnath deck in this matchup is just not being able to present a fast enough clock. If you give this Phoenix deck time, it's going to bury you. It just has access to so many like cards that generate multiple cards between pieces and treasure cruise and all of these things that if you do not get the game over with quickly, the Phoenix deck is they're likely to go through their entire deck.
I agree. Seeing a little bit of a think here from Phillip, trying to figure out, okay, like you mentioned, how can I get a clock going? How can I start winning this game? Important to note, cards like Bring to Light can't get things like Rest in Peace. They can only get instant sorceries and creatures. So that's going to make it so you cannot actually, find that powerful enchantment in this matchup. So this looks like we have 3 mana to pick up Jegantha, and that is not what we would call a show of strength here. If I was Shea, I would be sitting up in my seat very excited to see that one.
Yep. Exactly. And that looks like Phillip just doesn't really have any, no Chain of the Rocks, no binding to be able to answer the Ledger Shredder. I think I saw a copy of Extinction Event, but probably wants to hold that until the other Phoenixes come back. And just more cruising.
Yeah, going for a bruising here. Looks like Shea is going to try and get these Phoenixes back this turn, sort of nug in for 3. Really has a smallish graveyard now because of that, but has a stacked hand, should have about 7 cards or 8 cards in hand. Looks like doesn't have enough spells. This is sometimes what happens though, right? We saw Shea have so many reactive counter spells that he just can't actually do anything here. And he's going to play the Ledger Shredder, and I don't think he connived there, but
don't think so either. I think that might have been missed or but this is kind of a juicy Extinction Event for Phillip, gets 2 copies of Ledger Shredder. So I have to imagine you're going to fire that off here. But I also wonder if Shea is aware of the presence of Extinction Event, and maybe that's something he's considering. Maybe Shea has spells in hand, doesn't want to expose the Arclight Phoenixes to Extinction Event, as we see a Disdainful Stroke fired off an Extinction Event, so maybe that point is moot, but...
Yeah. I think we see NRG player champ competitors Zoe Reader come out to cheer on her friend Shea, see how the match is going in the background there. I love the player cam. We get to just sort of see everyone in the background. And I love to see the players' expressions, It's so fun. Like Shea smiled as he discards the 2 Arclight Phoenixes. Really, it's the personality. As we see an activated Hall of Storm Giants and a crash in here for a bunch with a Leyline Binding answering the bigger Ledger Shredder.
Right, and this is what we talked about. Leyline Binding and Chain of the Rocks aren't the type of removal spells when your opponent just gets to the stage of the game and they just start firing up Hall. Phillip just does not really have, if you look at Phillip's deck list, there's not really a single card in his entire deck list that actually removes a Hall of the Storm Giants from the battlefield. All the removal is either sorcery or binding or Extinction Event, Bring to Light. So just not really much here. It does have Pithing Needle if those were brought in, but I doubt you would bring those in against Phoenix.
Yeah, if you did, it's probably because you played this matchup a bunch and it's the only thing that can beat you, but I feel like that's not the case. It might be a situation where Phillip just has some card in his deck that's awful that we missed, and it's just like, oh yeah, you play the match 3 or 4 times, you realize it. But it looks like Phillip shuffled and cast Jegantha. I was about to say Jegantha. That's the southern name there.
Jeff Gantha.
Big Jugs hits the battlefield. 5/5.
Juicy J, as the kids call it.
Juicy J. Yeah, Juicy J sounds like someone that have a McDonald's meal. What is Jegantha's McDonald's order?
3 Big Macs.
Sheesh. I agree, though. Weirdly,
yeah,
I think you just nailed it.
All right, what do we got here for Shea? So untapped, might want to go towards that Hall, but yeah, I mean, Shea's not really in a position where he's getting raced by Jegantha. So, depending on what Shea's left there, and we still know about those 2 Phoenixes. So, Interesting. Yeah, we're just gonna fire it up, and we see a chump block from Jegantha.
Yeah, I think Shea's about to deck. Like, obviously, this Hall of Storm Giants is a huge problem, but if Phillip can live a couple more turns, Shea has like 4 cards in deck, I think.
Oh,
so that might be why the Arclights aren't coming back. I think our Time Walk is just like the last card in our deck somehow, and we just like can't actually do anything else besides this.
Yeah, you're right. The deck size is looking kind of small, so
double checking it has Ward and Boseiju.
Oh, I missed that. Right, that is an answer to the Hall. Okay, good point.
Okay, Shea just thumbed through his deck. It's bigger than it looks. It's about 9 or 10 cards, but it is small. It might be a situation where Shea's only spells are like pieces of the puzzles type cards.
Yeah, that's true. Which you know, even in a 10-card library, if you expect that if Phillip can buy enough time, you don't really want to cast pieces if your library is only 9 or 10 cards. So
yeah. Shea here also just holding up, spell pierces, strokes, and negates, just making sure that Phillip doesn't, accidentally stabilize with an Omnath or something like that.
Yeah, I totally had forgotten about the Boseiju when going through the deck list. But I will say there's only one copy of Boseiju in Phillip's deck, and Shea does have a second Hall in play, which is, I feel like, not something you typically see out of Phoenix players. Usually, I don't know how often I see the second Hall in Phoenix, but Shea does have a second one, and we're just going to fire it up.
Yeah, take block there. Yeah, something that I think players started doing a little bit near the RC, just as a way to sort of grind through red black decks, since they were going after your land so much and the game should go so long. And I know Phoenix players are always innovating on their deck and changing it, so it's really hard to know exactly. It wouldn't surprise me if there's like a third Hall in someone's sideboard on a weekend, just totally within the range of things Phoenix players do.
Yeah, very customizable deck, like you said. Just there's a million different options when you're playing blue-red, spells and a bunch of card draw spells and removal spells, stuff like that. We see Phillip just kind of throw it onto the battlefield, and that's going to do it.
No more jump blockers for the Hall. Yeah, that's going to do it there. And Shea just had a handful of answers, and he's like, listen, they're all conditional. I just need you to do something. Otherwise, I'm going to hit you there. So that was awesome to see Shea win there. That was our round number 2 of Pioneer, I believe. Both of those players were 1-0. So we're going to take a quick break for you here, and we're going to go back. The next round's going to be starting in just 1 second. So we're going to take a 2-minute break, go get some water. We'll meet y'all back here in just a second.